Sri Vishnu Sahasranama, name 802, is Vaja-Sanih. Is that right, or is it Vaja-Sana? According to rules of Sanskrit grammar, both names are acceptable. Parashara Bhatta takes it as Vaja-Sanih, and Shankaracharya and our own Baladev Vidyabhushan take it as Vaja-Sana, which can give different meanings. Sri Satyadevo Vashishta, he gives interpretations according to both versions of the name, but he says that Vaja-Sanih is the Vedic partam, because the name Vaja-Sanih appears in the Vedas, in the Rig Veda. First interpretation I'm going to do is from the publication from Madhva Sampradaya, and the first interpretation they give is for the name Vaja-Sana. That Vishnu is called Vaja-Sana because he is the antaryami of the sun. He's the indweller, the driving force of the sun, just like we have with every jiva is the Supreme Lord. Antaryami means indweller, Paramatma, super soul. So in the same way, the sun, the Lord lives with him also, but particularly known as, in this name, as the indweller of the sun. Exactly the Sanskrit for that is not given, but the main derivation that the interpreters give is to take Vaja as annam, food. But I wanted to bring this name about the sun first, because that links with the previous name, 801, Arka, which we discussed in detail as related to the sun. And the root from which sana or sani is derived is san, sambhakto, to divide or to give. Now, if we remember, Sri Parashara Bhatta is explaining a whole group of names in relation to Buddha avatar, and how Buddha Dev cheated the atheists into following him, and in this way he performed his unusual function as Buddha Dev. So he gives the meaning here of Vaja-Sanih as he who advocated eating a lot. Buddha Dev was a preacher of mundane pleasures, like eating. Generally, we think a Buddhist monk should be abstemious in eating. Actually, that was one of the points that Buddha gave in his teachings. Of course, Buddhism and what Buddha taught, there may be a divergence, just like Christianity and what Christ taught, or Islam and what Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught, or what Allah taught to Muhammad. But this meaning is being given. We'll discuss it a little more. Parashara Bhatta explains that by the atheistic teachings of Buddha Dev, he created a taste in the demoniac people for the pleasures of the world itself. Oh yeah, I was going to say about Buddha Dev. Previous to chalking out a new path of self-realization, what he called the middle path, he had undertaken severe austerities, and fasting until he almost died was one of them. But then he realized, no, that's not proper. You shouldn't eat too much, but you shouldn't eat too little either. Of course, this is all in the Bhagavad Gita. Na tashnatastu yogosti na chaikantamanashnataha. Na swapna chati shilasya jagrato naiva charjuna. One cannot be a yogi, Krishna advises Arjuna, if one eats too much or eats too little, or sleeps too much or sleeps too little. Common sense instructions for yogis. But Buddha apparently discovered this by his own experiments with truth. So how is it said that Buddha Dev created a taste for enjoyment of pleasures? And who are we referring to? Referring to he misled the demons, but he's talking about people who are interested in spiritual progress. For want of a better term, because Buddhism, an inherent principle in Buddhism is anatma, that there is no soul, there is no spirit. So we use the word spiritual progress in relation to Buddhism in a conventional way, not a technically accurate way. But those who are actually Buddhists, what are we talking about here? Most of the people who are Buddhists are lay people, but at least according to strict Theravadins, to be a Buddhist you really have to be a monk. Shankara had much the same thing, that if you want to be serious in pursuing spiritual life, he did believe in spirit, he wasn't an anatmavadi. It really begins with accepting sannyas. And so this misconception is there in Hinduism up to the present day that spiritual life means that you have to accept sannyas. Even though in the Vedic age we're talking about the Upanishads, and Shankara based his teachings on the Upanishads, Vedanta. So there were so many rishis are described who were married. Famously, Brihadaranyaka, the Yajnavalkya. Of course, he was at the point of renunciation. Then he had two wives, one who was materialistic and one who's not. Anyway, I am getting diverted here. But it wouldn't seem that Buddha created a taste for materialism when so many people who follow him, they renounce the world as he renounced the world. He himself was raised in a position of great material comfort, and everyone around him wanted him to continue pursuing material comfort, but he left that to seek out the truth. And those who follow him, the monks means they lead a renounced life, the monks who follow Buddha Dev. So what does it mean that he created a taste in them for the enjoyment of pleasures in this world? Now, reading Srila Prabhupada's books for the first time, it is dung, dung, there are lights going off in my mind again and again, lights going off and wow moments going off again and again, and the first time, and the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time. But especially the first time, because it was all quite unfamiliar to me. And one of the statements that really struck me, and which I couldn't understand at the time, took me some time to understand, it was a statement of Srila Prabhupada's in one of his purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela Chapter 7, in which is discussed how Lord Chaitanya met the Mayavadi sannyasis at Varanasi. And therein, within the purports, is some discussion of the Kashiya Mayavadi, means the Mayavadi sannyasis of Varanasi, and also the Saranath Buddhists, because at Saranath, which is just a short distance from Varanasi, is a major ancient center of Buddhism. So Srila Prabhupada wrote in the purport, factually both the Kashya and the Sarnath Mayavadis. I seem to remember the first time I read it said there's Kashya Mayavadis and the Sarnath Buddhists. As well as any other philosophers who have no knowledge of the spirit soul are advocates of utter materialism. Sarnath Buddhists definitely have no knowledge of the spirit soul because they deny the existence of the spirit soul. The Kashya Mayavadis, they accept the existence of the soul, but they don't have proper knowledge because they say there's only one soul. Eko Brahma Dvitiya Nasti. There's only one Brahma. There's no two. And they're quoting from Shastra, but not with the understanding that we who are the servants of the dust of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas would accept. So, they're advocates of utter materialism, and that threw me out when I first read it. What does that mean, that they're advocates of utter materialism? What can it mean? We see that they're very renounced. How can they be advocates of utter materialism? As I realized at some point after spending some time in Thailand, I realized how this is true. Well, I might have had some realization of it before, but it really came home to me in Thailand, which is, as one devotee who was there, godbrother of mine who passed away now, Bhutatma, who was also an astrologer, or he was a friend. He was a friend of Hrishikesh Ananda, who spent most of his life there, who's an astrologer. And he said that Thailand is ruled by Venus, Shukra, the god of material enjoyment. Venus in Greek mythology is female. Shukra is male. So Thailand is famous for enjoyment, although people can have sex anywhere in the world and there are prostitutes everywhere in the world. Thailand is a popular spot for what is literally called sex tourism, because you can get anything you want at any age you want, and if you want young boys, you could have young boys, and it might be illegal, but the law turns a blind eye. Of course, things are being closed down due to the pandemic. But apart from that, it's a place of material enjoyment. There's the general mood is one of let's be happy. That's all. The Thai people themselves are not overly interested in money making. They've become political in the last few decades. Otherwise, just get some food, eat, giggle and tell silly jokes among themselves, and they're quite happy with that. And they're Buddhists, hardcore Buddhists. So how do you put the two things together? I understood that what it is, that Buddhism, the goal is nirvana. What is that nirvana? It's undefined because it's so inconceivable, but it's a state of non-existence or nothingness. It's not something very relishable. It's only if you're really, really, really fed up with everything, then you want to become nothing permanently. Although you can't become nothing, because in Buddhist philosophy, even from the beginning, you or I or anything else doesn't exist. It's a very very well argued philosophy in many ways, but it doesn't click with anything of our experience, or what we might call common sense. It doesn't click at least not with me. So the aim is not very relishable. If you can giggle and joke and eat some pig meat along with noodles and soy sauce, then common Thai food. Pig's meat, pork with noodles and soy sauce. Then what do you want to become nothing for? Especially when the way to become nothing is so drab. You have to be a monk and you have to be dry and you're not supposed to laugh. Thais are very fond of laughing. Or should I say, giggling is more like it. You don't see belly laughs so much. So, what did I understand from all of this? That the goal of Buddhism is so undesirable that people subscribe to it, but they don't really follow it because the goal is so undesirable and the way to attain it is so undesirable and so hard to attain anyway, that they just become materialists. What is left but to become materialists? And the actual religion that people practice is more worship of spirits. They worship spirits and they worship Hindu deities for material benefit. And for deep philosophy, it might have been there with some monks previously, and they're trying to explain the unexplainable Buddhist philosophy. But most people not very interested in philosophy. So, of course, this is a broad painting of their situation, but it is it's a generalization. But don't mind. I don't want to offend any Thais or anyone else for that matter, but it fits. Now, Parashara Bhatta in this regard says that it's the vow of a Buddhist monk that he should consume mouthfuls of curd rice every day early in the morning. I'm not aware of this being a Buddhist practice. It might have been previously. At the time that Parashara Bhatta wrote this, he would have had commune with Buddhists and Buddhist monks around him, especially Kanchipuram was a site of Buddhism and also of Vaishnavism and also of Shaivism. Buddhism is no longer there. This, I doubt if it is a principle in all schools of Buddhism. Maybe for those in South India where curd rice is very popular. We don't get curd rice beyond South India. It's a very South Indian kind of thing. So it might have been that in one particular sect or in one particular ashram or mat of the Buddhists, they did that. I didn't research it. I guess if I really wanted to, I could have researched it more, but I didn't bother to. Speaking of Thailand, there's one Buddhist sect in Thailand that I visited them at least once, their main place, and became friends with one of their monks who actually spoke some English, which wasn't very common in Thailand at the time. One sect called the Santi Asok, who they're really into being real Buddhists and not just for the sake of formality, but they're really into it. They're vegetarians. And one of the things is they only eat once a day, so they definitely don't eat curd rice early in the morning. They do rise early in the morning, as all people with any pretensions to be on the strict religious or spiritual path must do. So they eat once a day, but they eat and eat and eat. They really pack it in. That's what I saw anyway. This was a long time ago. Long time ago means according to the measure of my pathetic life. Now, another understanding of the name Vaja-Sanih. Another meaning, this is given by Baladev Vidyabhushan. Actually, it's given first by Shankaracharya, and Baladev Vidyabhushan follows the same understanding, although not in exactly the same word. Shankaracharya gives the interpretation, Vajam anam artinam sanoti dadati iti Vaja-Sanih. The translator of this has said that he who gives food to those who pray for it. Artinam can mean someone who prays for it, or someone. It also can mean someone who needs it, someone who wants it. So, Vaja-Sanih means he who gives food or gives nourishment to all of his creation. And the same idea, Baladev Vidyabhushan. He's the giver of food, and Baladev Vidyabhushan says, because he quotes from Shruti, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Anado Vasudana. So, he gives Anna and he gives Vasu. So the Supreme Soul is the giver of food and the giver of wealth. Anada means one who gives Anna, one who feeds. One of the commentators, Sri Radha Krishna Shastri, says that this name signifies that he has made provisions for all living beings for their food. He gives the example, even before they're born, the milk for the child is waiting there, just in the mother's breast, just when he's born. It's not there before he's born. As soon as the child is born, milk comes to the breast. It's all the arrangement of the Supreme Lord. Very hard to explain that in terms of Darwinian evolutionary theory. How such a thing, or how anything could have come about. It's amazing how people believe such nonsense. Yeah, you see, our tick-ticky doesn't believe it. See? Good tick-ticky. Tick-ticky means house lizard. That's a Bengali name. So, and another example that Srila Prabhupada gave was the elephants in the jungle. They ate huge amounts of food. Huge. They actually do. You'll see they'll eat bamboo shoots, not like the way the Chinese prepare it, but little bamboo shoots, but quite big ones. And they huge amounts. But most of it they don't digest. It just gets passed out, semi-digested. So they have to eat a lot to nourish themselves by the arrangement of, not evolution, by the arrangement of nature. The elephants pass out so much stool, and they just take a little nourishment from the what they eat, sugar cane or whatever it may be. But they need to, apart from having a big body, where they eat in such a way that their bodies don't process a lot of it. It's not that you don't see them like cows, they eat grass and then they sit down and they ruminate. They eat lots of grass and then they sit down and they burp it up and chew it thoroughly. But elephants don't do that. So many things we learn by moving around in this world and observing various things. That was the traditional system. You see things in nature and you understand the teachings of Shastra in terms of nature. So in this way, Srila Prabhupada explains that the elephant eats 40 kilos at one session, and the tiny ant eats a grain of sugar, but it's all provided for by the Supreme Lord. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko yo vidhati kaman. Eko yo bahuni vidhati kaman. Yeah, there's one eternal living being, and there are many, 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 many others, and that one is providing the needs of all others. So that's a beginning of theism, understanding that we need food to live. Without food, we cannot live. So a beginning of theism is to recognize God or nature is giving us this food. In Christian tradition, so many, practically most religious traditions, there are prayers said before taking a meal to recognize that this is being given us by the Supreme Lord. Even in some sects of Buddhism or Taoism, there's something is said before taking a meal to recognize that this is the workings of, at the very rudimentary level, this is the workings of Mother Nature, who has given us this so that we can live. It's a whole big machination of Mother Nature that the seed goes in the ground, the seed comes from the tree, just like you throw out some tomato, and then after some time you see tomato plants just start growing, papaya, anything, lemon. Just throw out the seeds and then automatically it grows. Just here in the garden, and just where I'm staying, there's note shak. Bengalis may know note shak. In Tamil Nadu, they don't know at all. I don't know how it came. It's just growing automatically. One kind of pot herb. After some time, you'll be able to eat it if there are any Bengalis around to know that it's edible. So just by itself, the seed, it seems it's just coming by itself, but it's not just coming by itself. It's all the work from, let's say, from the tomato. It's in the fruit. Actually, tomato is a fruit, according to biology, taxonomy. It's a fruit. So that seed goes in the ground. That's put there in the fruit, so that when it goes in the ground, and you'll see just like Sitafal or Ramfal or Hanuman fal or whatever, custard apple they call it. Is it in English? I think so. Custard apple. It's made in such a way that humans and monkeys eat it. Monkeys are also very fond of it, and they spit out the seed. So that distributes the seed, because the monkeys jump in the sitafal tree, they grab a sitafal fruit, they take it away and open it up and eat the fruit, which covers the seed, and spit it out. So in this way the seed gets spread. The peepal tree, the fruit is eaten by certain birds, and the seed goes in the stomach of the bird, and then the seed with the heat of the stomach and the chemicals in the stomach, it gets processed so that when it gets passed out in the stool of the bird, it's ready to go in the ground and germinate. How does that come? By evolutionary process. So in other words, and then there's this, the sun and the moon and the water. It's all a huge process by which a little tomato plant comes up and you get tomatoes. So to recognize that there's a whole plan. It's not just going on just like that. It's not emni, as they say in Bengali. It's not just boom. But there's a whole of nature, the gods, the spirits, and ultimately the Supreme Lord is behind it all. So to recognize that by saying prayers before a meal, O Lord, who has given us this food, we thank you, whatever it may be, Christian grace. I used to say it so many years ago, but I don't remember. We say also, Sharira Vidyajal Jarandriyata Hekal. We pray, or we make some submission that the Supreme Lord has kindly given us this food, this prasad, to nourish the body, to help us control the senses, and ultimately to help us develop love of Krishna. So that's the beginning. In Vedic culture, there's recognition of the goddess Annada, one form of Durga Devi, mother, the mother of the universe, mother nature. So one of her functions is she gives food. One of the commentators here, Vaishnav commentator, I believe it is, says that food, good food. We don't just want food, we want good food, don't we? And he writes that with sincere devotion to God, one can get good food because Vaja-Sanih is the food giver. So if we want good food, if we're supposed to follow a resident of Vrindavan, so if we follow Madhu Mangal, the buffoon friend, Brahmin friend of Krishna, whose main interest in life is to serve Krishna, of course. But along with that, he's very interested in eating. Very, very interested in eating. So we could be followers of him. But good food, yes, good food. In Vaishnavism, we don't deny, we don't say you have to follow Raghunath Das Goswami and you must eat the leftover rice, which even the cows won't eat. No, we don't say that. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appreciated, but he didn't say to Raghunath Das, you must continue doing this. And he didn't instruct his followers to do that. He did say for renunciants, bhalo na khaibe, don't chase after good food, don't be after good food. Jiva lala sheje iti uti dhai. What is that? Udara pasta. What is that? Udara. Jiva upasta parayan. Krishna nahi pai. Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that who runs after food here and there, whose main business is to run after food, then such a person, he becomes addicted to the pleasures of the tongue and the belly and ultimately the genitals and cannot get Krishna. So that's a fact. But at the same time, again, it's the middle path. We don't say don't eat good food. You can take in moderation. But our aim of life is not eating. Our aim of life is to serve Krishna. And one of the ways to serve Krishna is to accept only food offered to Krishna. Another meaning of Vaja-Sanih. Not only is he giving food, but he is the best eater of all. He's the best in everything. So when it comes to eating, he can even out-eat Madhu Mangal, as he showed in the form of Govardhan, as Jagannath, 65, day and night he's being offered food. He goes on eating, and no one can eat to the extent that he does. At the time of the universal destruction, he eats the whole universe. Another meaning, that all nectar is in him. So he is Vaja-Sanih. These are different meanings of the name Vaja-Sanih or Vaja-Sanih. It's not one of the greatly well-known names, but it's another meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who we worship by 1,000 names, by unlimited names, and by one name, Krishna, and particularly via the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Dante nidaya chunakang padaya nipatya kritva chakakushatam etadaham ravimi. He sadhava sakala eva vihaya durat. Gauranga chandra charane kurutanuragaha. Parivadatu jano yata tatava nanumokaro navayang vicharayama. Hari rasa madhirama dati mata bhuvi vilutama nartama nirvishama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.